evolved over this past year to provide fiber, that they were going to be the initial provider and buy the fiber and lay it, and then they brought in, and they're still working on it, a private developer to be the one that would be the service provider. So that's one example of the city laying the fiber, and then a private industry would come in and run that service. So that's one option that folks have taken. Boulder also looked into free public Wi-Fi, which they have now to date, but they're also looking and doing more studies on it to see if they could also lay fiber, but they're still in the study phase of what they want to do. I read their study this morning, and their initial cost for laying all that fiber would be about $100 million, which is rather significant. Longmont, another example is that they're the full service provider. They're in a much different scenario than we would be, as they are the power and light provider. So they already have a lot of that build out in their community. So their cost is about a $40 million bond issue is what they had. So much different, as you can see, if you don't have the infrastructure compared to if you were a power and light provider. Next slide. Just some activity in northern Colorado. I'm sure you've kind of heard from other community leaders what they're up to. Greeley has not gone to a vote yet. They're kind of talking about it, but so far in their 2017 budget, they have allocated dollars for a feasibility study and a community study. So that's what they're up to. Similar boat, but they have already had some work sessions, and they had their budget meeting in October talking to their board about that. Loveland and Fort Collins have passed the exemption already, and they're still working through the study process to see what they want to do with that. They've had several community meetings, and I know Fort Collins goes to their board in December to figure out how they'd like to proceed. And then Larimer County just passed a vote last week, and so no telling what they're up to yet, but we'll stay in touch with them to find out. And then some voting results of around the region. Longmont, interesting enough, went to their first vote back in 2009, and it failed. They got a lot of pushback from the industry, and so it was opposed at that time, but then they brought it back in 2011, and then it passed. And you can see those numbers. A lot of them did pass overwhelmingly. I think the communities overall, there's a lot of outcry of people who need that more connection. Broadband is no longer a luxury for communities. It's more of it's how people get to work. You can work from home and you connect. So in schools, more and more students have homework that they have to have a computer from home. So we're seeing that it's more of a need and not just a luxury for folks to have.
Kelly,
Mm-hmm.
for each one of those, on the previous page you had defined on what each of the votes did. Do you know for each one of those ballot initiatives, was it free Wi-Fi? Was it being the service provider? What was it for each one of those?
I don't think that any of them put exactly what they were planning to do. It was just very standard language saying, is it okay if your town gets involved in the broadband industry? And then they do studies afterwards to figure out what they're going to do.
Okay, the reason I ask is because I see reasons for ballot question, we have the reasons there, and then when you look at those percentages, well, if you put free in there, people are going to vote for it overwhelmingly.
So it's a fair point. So I think most of them, like I said, have adopted standard language. It gives them out the exemption.
Okay.
Language is SB 152.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if we can get into this, but one of the things that have happened in those committees is now there's an expectation laid out there, even though they didn't say anything.
Right.
What's going to happen? There is an expectation, and that's what as we watch Fort Collins, you can see that's happening, and feel that from Fort Collins, I think, and also Loveland and similar things. So, but they are typically just standard. Can we get out from underneath this and do something? Maybe.
Gotcha.
Language.
So has the industry just backed off of opposing these?
Yeah. So generally, yes.
Okay.
Comcast put up a lot of money in the first one, 2009, to defeat it. Longmont learned from that, and then they came back, and Comcast didn't put up much, and they have not. And so nobody's really put up any kind of. What now they determine is their battleground is what to do. Right, so it's not about the election anymore, because these are just happening so much anymore. In fact, Again, I think there will be some legislation this session again to get rid of SB 152, because
Okay.
now it's just become almost routine.
They can't fight every.
Yeah, so,
But doesn't it also on the other end, because I think I remember when we had the Xcel Energy guy here, I think it may, they are quickly trying to look at, how they combat this, and how do they, what can they come up with
Mhm.
to come back and, I think it opens some door for some additional conversation, perhaps with existing providers as
Yeah,
well, where we
maybe.
might be able to generate and get better.
and we're gonna get into that a little bit here and all
So-
that, so, yeah.
So one piece we wanted to bring to you as well was kind of a look at the affordability of broadband in Windsor. So all the prices you see up here are for residential. There are prices that we got off of each provider's website. For the most part, they are in pretty reasonable ranges. Obviously, speeds vary quite a bit from where you are in town. CenturyLink closer to I-25 can get you closer to 40, but in the middle of Windsor in this area, you're looking at 12. So it
Oh, it's up to
varies.
12?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's
We're
fun.
moving up, right?
Yeah, it was 5 a couple years ago.
Yeah, so it varies pretty greatly. Comcast is pretty stable across the board. Minimum is 25 usually. And then below that, you see Longmont's price structure. The standard fiber 1 gig connection at $100 a month. That next line, that charter member line, that is if the property owner signs up for their NextLight service within 3 months of it being available, they get that prorated cost. And that stays with the property throughout its lifetime.
How much money does NextLight receive from the city of Longmont? The reason I ask that is that average cost subsidized? So is it being subsidized by tax dollars, or is it completely self-sustaining?
Well, they have a $40 million bond issue that they have, but also part of their, if you read their language on their Q&A section, it's an enterprise fund, because it is through their power and light.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how they're saying it's being subsidized through the enterprise fund as well, through, customers, what they're paying.
They
So-
own NextLight, don't they?
Yes, it
But
is,
it
they
is
are in the
taxes.
county.
What's that?
It's not taxes,
Okay.
it's the electrical costs. And so they're running it through as a subsidiary of their electrical utility,
Okay.
and therefore the electric utility put up the bond, the 40 million guaranteeing the bond
Mm-hmm.
through electric rates.
Okay,
So
so the
they-
electric rates went up.
Yep, well, no, it didn't go up, they just
Okay.
guaranteed it. So if they don't generate enough money through NextLight broadband,
Mm-hmm.
essentially then the electric utility will have to come back and backfill the bond payment.
But the electric utility is a subsidiary of the city of Longmont?
It is owned by,
Owned by Longmont?
Yep.
Okay.
And just as a quick note for Longmont as well, we learned on, what was that, Wednesday or Thursday, that their take rate is fantastic. They're getting on average.
what does take
about-
rate mean, say what that
Take
means.
rate, so that the level of adoption, people signing up. And the smart thing that Longmont has done is before they do a lot of build out to a neighborhood, they get a minimum take rate to say, okay, we're at least meeting, the sweet spot is 30 to 38%, depending on the neighborhood, and they're meeting that very easily. So they're doing some good progress on that front at least.
We've kind of talked about this, but the potential uses that the town could do if you pass an exemption to SB 152, from the one rate of being the service provider, like Longmont, obviously there's costs associated with that. We could provide free internet in town facilities, or at the rec center, or in our parks, or just building out our own network and expansion with the school, laying that fiber. So there's a variety of options that the town could pursue if we wanted to. Also kind of similar potential roles of the town. We could be a provider, we could also build out that network like Cortez has done, or just promote broadband. There are some policies that we could adopt, like a dig once philosophy, and incorporate that into our planning documents and to the ordinance. So that could be if there's town projects that we have, and we know we're gonna dig up the ground, that we lay the fiber then. Or, I don't know, other types of projects that the town adopts that we could do. Or with the developer community, if we know a big subdivision's coming in, we say that either it has to be, the conduit that you lay has to be jointly used for other uses, or have them install that fiber. When Cody and I were kind of talking, we know we have those, planning has chapters 15 and 16 of the municipal code up, so I don't know if that's potentially an opportunity to look at it then. I'm not sure, but we can talk about that.
Are we not doing any of that right now? I thought we had talked about that, and, I mean, we are gonna do that though when we build the public works
We are
facility.
putting our own kind of
Our,
fiber.
ourselves, but we're not making that stipulation on any other developers at this time.
Correct.
Cause, you know, in talking with, the city of Loveland, they highly recommend that we take a look at that. It's saying, you know, I mean, they figure it's gonna save them millions of dollars if and when they ever have to go and do something. Because right now, anytime somebody goes in, that is a stipulation that I believe Loveland has, that
Yeah.
you've got to add that to your.
And that would be a good low-hanging fruit that we could figure out and go that way. Benefits of involvement. Cody and I were at this conference last week, and something that was a huge takeaway for me is just hearing that they believe by 2020, online streaming will outpace traditional cable. And so the chart went, basically they flip-flopped, the cable goes down and streaming, like Netflix, Hulu, all these types of online sources is gonna skyrocket, so you have to have basically the bandwidth to be able to carry that, and so many people are working from home, or just a variety of things, so just getting in front of our potential options now before it really takes off, I think is important. And like we've talked about, it's no longer a luxury anymore. People are relying on connectivity for work and school and a variety of reasons. And we've seen in this past election, 65 other communities have passed the exemption to broadband, so we know that it's picking up a lot of momentum in the state of Colorado. Just people wanting better service, more reliability, better cost structure. So there's a variety of benefits that we have for broadband.
So this next bulleted list just kind of shows some of the challenges that we'd be facing. A lot of these are challenges if we were to actually pursue some form of municipal broadband. One of the biggest ones, and I think Kelly informed you guys about it last week, is Comcast offering gig speeds without having to do a large build out of fiber. And that's through this DOCSIS 3.1 technology. So that what that allows them to do is send more data and use higher speeds using existing coax infrastructure that goes to almost every home, especially in a community like ours. So that raises a lot of concerns for other municipalities like Fort Collins, where they are now kind of left second guessing the path that they've taken. So that
Because this is a positive.
Yeah, I mean, overall, for the industry.
I mean, is it for sure that they are going to do that, or are they just talking about doing it, or?
And what's pricing, did you,
We have not been able to find pricing for it, but
they are rolling it out.
they are rolling it out in early 2017. So
And
we've got that from a couple
where-
different sources.
Where are they rolling it out? Statewide?
All they've told us is Colorado, northern Colorado specifically. Other than that, I don't have the answer to that. The rest of them are, you know, all kind of varying challenges that we would face depending on kind of the path and direction that you guys provide to us.
My guess is we're gonna learn more very soon. If Fort Collins is making a decision on December 16th, I have a feeling there's gonna be something revealed before that decision.
From
As to-
Comcast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
To make a
unscheduled,
play.
unscheduled and potential. And they very well may be known if Fort Collins now, I don't know, but we have not been able to find out about it, so.
Do you have any sources?
We tried asking. I had a Comcast guy and he's like, I can't tell you. So
Asking, that's.
I know.
Demand.
I should have demanded it, but anyway.
so this is our next to last slide here, as far as potential next steps for us. We do have, as it stands in the budget for 2017, we have included $35,000 to hire a consultant to help us look into this. We can or cannot use that, but we do have it in the budget as it exists now. We can find out what the community actually wants. Are they interested in this or not? Our Comcast franchise agreement is coming up for renewal here in the next couple years. So that is I guess a chip in the game as well, if we decide to pursue this. And of course, we could just take no action. So, like I said, we do have money in the budget to study it next year, if you so desire.
Our franchise agreement, do we have the ability to try to negotiate financial terms, and to the extent that it could affect our citizens? I mean, meaning in terms of better pricing or not, or how, what is, exactly what do we get out of the franchise deal with them?
What we get when it comes to trying to customize it for us versus any other community is a lot of pushback. What they don't wanna do is open the door to some deal and then, have word get around, and then they gotta offer that deal to everybody, and then the next deal, and the next deal. So the standard negotiating, if you wanna call it that, tactic with the industry is to say, this is our form, we're not inclined to modify.
Well, and just to add to that, Ian, if you might, they just like Longmont, they play the shell game a little bit. Telecommunications Act only regulates cable. It does not regulate broadband. So they will never go in and allow you to, in a franchise, get into the broadband regulation piece. And it'll only be about cable and services of cable. And it's pretty standard what you can and can't negotiate, which is almost nothing.
Do you think that will change though, in light of so many municipalities looking to go down a different path? Because I guess my initial reaction would be to wait a little bit, let's see what comes out of Fort Collins, let's see, if Comcast is gonna start making some different options available, or what kinds of packages or things, because we can spend that money at any time, we don't have to, we all know it's in the budget, it just doesn't mean, and who's gonna do we have to go through an RFP or something, or what's that period of time for that?
Yes. And I agree with what you just said, except I would add one more piece to that is our partner in this, and I would say it's kind of a partner in doing it together and minimizing potentially our costs is Greeley.
Yeah.
And do we have a good update from them on where they are today?
Yep, I spoke to their staff member who's in charge of it. They would be interested in potentially doing a feasibility study with us, but not a citizen community survey. They want to do statistically valid for their community only. So we couldn't partner on that ground, but potentially a feasibility study.
But are they moving the ball along at any timeline?
They're working on their RFP for the community study part of it.
They are.
So,
Would our needs assessment, 35,000, does that include the community engagement?
We don't really have it.
Just a
It's
placeholder?
just a placeholder. It can be what you want it to be.
Okay. Because I would not like to get too far behind on this. I think we should be cautious, especially with Comcast, maybe rolling out something. Maybe we can offer to be a guinea pig community. We're small enough yet.
Well, I think
Progressive
we let those who already passed 152, is what I would suggest, is they be more, they're already a little bit more ahead. We haven't even passed that, so
Correct.
maybe we let them kind of see, plus there's even other communities. I know Eaton has reached out to me, they said if we did something with broadband, they would be interested, and I don't know if, what that looks like. There may even be, others like, Milliken and Johnstown,
But
if
if
we go on that track.
If Comcast is coming out with this new
Mhm.
speedier service, maybe we could do that and avoid doing the whole broadband.
Yeah,
Where are we
So
at
that's
in
what I
terms of
suggested.
lawmakers, I guess, addressing the Senate bill, are they, is that just kind of?
I think CML always puts on their list, but it hasn't, I mean, I think now, unfortunately, the success has shown legislators are gonna say, we'll just do it.
Just pass it.
If we don't do your work, we just do it. So I don't know if it's gonna get repealed or not. My guess is probably not. There was an effort last year and it didn't get done. But the flip side of the argument is, why is it, if it's not a good standing bill, let's just get rid of it at the state level?
What was the argument for the Senate, for that bill?
Comcast got in there,
Lobby.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it was a big
Just to
AT,
kind of protect our
Yes.
infrastructure that we built, and we
Yeah.
don't wanna, okay,
yeah,
spread that around.
yeah, other broadband providers.
Is there any studies or information on what the business community, I mean, I know we haven't surveyed Windsor, but like I'd hate for us to get left behind where, you know, businesses are locating or looking for this in where they wanna locate.
I guess that's kind of a good question that I'm wondering about is, do we have a solution here in search of a problem? Is there actually a problem here? Do we have feedback from the community, residential and businesses that say this is actually
One
an
only
issue?
feedback I've ever had, bank
Yeah,
in town, who could not get the level of service they wanted from Comcast, and they couldn't find it anywhere else.
yeah,
Now, they're not going anywhere because they're a bank,
right,
so they had to settle. But, yeah, as 1 gig becomes standard, if you don't have that, you're gonna lose economic development.
Will be a big domino.
Well, that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
That would be a good question for Stacy, I think, is how often does she hear that's an issue? And then also, if Comcast is, rolling this thing out anyways, okay, they've already solved the hole in the market.
I
What are
bet
we doing?
Stacy probably doesn't hear a lot today, but 2 or 3 years from now, it may be standard enough that she
I
will.
would imagine that the internet issue would come up to some degrees, right? I mean, if
And that would probably be your community engagement. You could do a business and a community piece,
no,
ask that question.
It was one of
find
the
out.
things that came up when I went with Stacy down to the National Site Selectors meeting down in Denver, is where a business decides to locate is based upon access to communications and how close are they to an international airport where they can get people,
sure.
all that kind of stuff. It is a valid point.
It's a valid point, but the question is, are we searching for a solution, are we searching for a problem and we have a solution? That's my question, is it a problem here?
And that's what the first bullet does for you.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, you gotta spend some money to find that out. Cause you're all asking good questions and we don't necessarily have the answers.
I think right now I lie somewhere between what they're saying, which is, I think when Comcast starts to roll out 1 gig, 50 meg is gonna get pretty attractive. I mean, or the price would be more affordable, because they're gonna have to be competitive on the people that don't want 1 gig, they're just happy with 50, meg. I can tell you from a business owner in Windsor that Comcast Business is a whole different rate structure than residential.
Yeah.
Like screw job
And
compared
what do you
to.
use?
You
Huh?
say it's
Do you
not.
use Comcast?
Yeah.
You use Comcast?
The problem is it's because they only bring in, if you have a business and you've only got fiber coming in from one provider, which is Comcast, they know they've got you cornered. And I'm telling you, I pay for the 50 down and the 5 up or whatever it is, and it's $110 a month, just for that. I mean, and that's where I call them up and get service. I'm like, wait a second, that's like double what I pay at my house for that same, and well, that's what, they just, Comcast Business is a whole different price structure than.
So I was reading through the packet and you brought up the point about competition. I think competition is very important, that's how, in the forces of the free market, that's how prices are regulated. How does Colorado compare on the regulation of broadband to other states? The reason I ask that is that what is the heart of the issue here? We're looking for more competition. probably not things that we can do here at the local level, but things at the state level that, you know, to open up the market to more competition to, cause, you know, if you only have Comcast, I mean, it seems like Colorado, or Windsor has decent, we have a few different choices, but they're not necessarily the best. What kind of things that can be introduced to bring more competition to the market?
I have a theory, but I don't know if it's a good theory. if you
Go
want
for
to-
it.
I have a feeling.
I don't think it's a state by state issue. I think it's a density issue. So if you're in rural America,
Mhm.
you are significantly being underserved comparatively to metropolitan areas, anywhere in the United States. So for instance, tomorrow I'm going to Lamar, right,
Mhm.
for Energy Impact, and we've set aside oil and gas funds to deal with broadband in rural America. Tomorrow we're hearing from Ray, Colorado, who's done this, is gonna build their own system because they can't get even what you're talking about today in Ray, Colorado. And so they are going out and seeking grant funds and their own system to build their own system, just to keep even with somewhat the metro areas of Colorado. So I don't know if it's a state issue or even a federal issue necessarily, Brendan. I think it's a density populous issue of where the market is, what drives it, and what the competition wants.
I think it's probably a blend of both.
Yeah.
I'm doing a search here for, like, my parents live in rural northeastern Michigan, and the town I grew up in is like 2,000 people.
Yeah.
And the nearest populace is an hour away, and they've got really good cable internet.
And it could be because somebody's in the neighborhood went by, the highway went by, the fiber highway
No,
went by.
what happened is that Charter Communications came in, and they live out in the country, and they decided they put a line right down my parents' road. And, of course, it was the point that you had,
Take.
had a certain amount of take percentage or whatever it was. But that's the question is, the point about rural versus urban, yeah, is spot on. It's a good point, but when I look at Windsor versus, you know, where I grew up, Windsor's 4 or 5 times the size and is closer to Denver,
Right.
Fort Collins, and all these other municipal areas. So I'm wondering what kind of regulatory impact is there that's possibly.
Again, I would flip it on you and say, I don't know if it's regulatory in nature, I would say it's incentive laden. So if the state thinks it's important, they're participating
Mhm.
in helping subsidize, back to the Ray instance, they're helping subsidize those to allow them either get the fiber in
Mhm.
and paying a private company something to subsidize them to do that. But I don't know if it's a regulatory nature piece, because again, National Telecommunication, you have a better
The
answer?
FCC has almost no regulation on
Yeah.
broadband services. And that's a lot of the problem that of why you see so many problems with it. It's flat out not regulated. And so that is something that is in the works of being changed.
Is the cable, so is cable and broadband regulated differently?
Yes, the Cable Telecommunications Act. It goes back to 1992 or so when cable came on board. The feds decided to get involved,
Mm-hmm.
and they passed the Telecommunications Act. Broadband, internet, they have not, so they stay out of it.
And I think the barrier to entry is the cost,
Yes.
to lay all that.
Well, yeah, that's a fair
that's-
point.
So I think if at some point we could do that, I don't know that we could financially, but if we had it, could we invite more competition, say, hey, we've got the fiber throughout our community, you know, offer different companies to use it?
That's a wholesaler.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So you build a electric line, you build a gas line, or you build a cable, or you build a broadband, and then you say, here, come in, we'll let you come in at our head end on the broadband, and your amount to do that is this much, and then you have access to our system to be able to provide that
And
service.
we would charge them like a rental rate for using our
Right.
fiber, so that other communities have
And
done.
how does it affect residents who do like triple play though? Because
Mm.
both CenturyLink
Yeah.
and Comcast,
Off
you
the
know,
list.
they get, I mean, you know, they get a much better rate by having all three, you know, having digital or,
Yeah.
digital, cable, and telephone
So,
service.
but I'll be interested, but I think, again theoretically, that chart that Kelly described, 2020, there's gonna be one system of majority of people are gonna be using is the internet. Cable,
And all the rest will
cable,
go away.
cable numbers are going down, everybody's losing their landlines going down.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, a majority of residents probably will be plugging in that wall socket, it'll be internet,
Whatever, okay.
and that's gonna be the resource for everything you just described, gentlemen. That's where it's.
So we
that's-
have to make, I mean, what's, we have to give you some direction?
Well,
or-
I would like to, I'm personally not ready to tell you, let's get going and spend the 35,000. What I would like to do is, follow up with Greeley, I wanna hear their timeline a little bit more, understand that, see where they are in that process, understand why they are in that process. And if they are ready to go, I wanna come back to you and say, they're ready to go. Do you wanna piggyback on that? And if so, here's their timeline, and here's what they're doing. If they're open for that, I think they are. But I really have not had a conversation with the manager and his staff per se, and I think that's important for me to do, to understand a little bit more. If they're not ready to go, then, then I'll come back and say, well, they're not ready to go, do you wanna push this and do it on your own or not? I would say, I think there's some merit to doing it with Greeley, personally. And then if it makes some sense, I will pitch that idea, maybe there's other communities in the area that like to add to it
Yeah.
and be a part of this too.
Yeah, I think there might be some I think it makes sense to maybe wait just a little bit to see, it might open us to a few more options and if we pull the trigger sooner.
So when you say do this with Greeley, you're just talking about the community
The study,
assessment?
no, I'm thinking about needs assessment, yeah.
Okay.
And then, let's say that's a go, we'll have a better idea of the pricing of that, and then we can come back and talk about this community engagement. There may be some very important information that's gonna be needed by the engagement piece to do the assessment, right? Because I can see the assessment's gonna be technical in nature,
Yes.
right? But there's also then they're gonna be, what's the feasibility, which is gonna be, what's the need? Because there's two pieces, what do we have system-wide, and what can we do? And then, but first they're gonna go, well, we can't tell you if you wanna do it, because until we find out if anybody even cares or not.
So when we get to that point, assuming people care, I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like, and we've talked about it at the leadership meetings, all these communities are working in silos. Forget
Yeah.
Longmont, but
Yeah.
Loveland, Fort Collins, Greeley, Windsor, Eaton, Severn, I would hate if it got to the point where we're all building our own little independent. It seems like some sort of economy of scale.
yeah, and
That's
and,
why years
well,
away.
part of what I've talked to Loveland and Fort Collins both about is, gee, can we run a wire across the street or the highway and do a plug into your system if you decide to do it? And then join your system, is it cheaper, is there something like that could happen?
And they would have more customers to spread the
If that makes sense, I don't know, but that,
but you've had that
yeah,
conversation, okay.
yeah. We've tried to break in the room with them,
Mm-hmm.
we haven't had much success other than just calling.
Yeah, we tried.
We tried, we actually found out about a meeting and said, can we come, and they said no. So I don't know what that's all about, other than they're trying to keep focused. I think that really, I'll tell you, that is their issue. Their issue is performance. Back to that thing I said earlier about passing SB 152, now the pressure's on.
Mhm.
They're getting calls on a regular basis saying, where's my cheap internet? And I think that's what the mayor's gonna hear in his call-in this week. He's doing, Mayor
yeah,
Trops
that's
is one of the mayor, he's having a call-in, and I think he's doing that very much for that reason, is to try and get the air cleared, that this is not gonna be cheap internet, and here's the options. So they're feeling it a little bit. I think they were ill-prepared for that, and
Yeah.
they will admit that. They were not ready for the reaction is, hey, we passed by 80%, so where's our internet?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I like this part first, of figuring it out first. Then, if you choose, let's just say we do that route, then if you choose to go to vote, at least you're saying, here's what we might do. Right?
Based on this.
Based upon this, if you decide that's what you wanna do. Versus the Bass Ackwards, which I say, hey, can we look into it? Well, they vote, and then
Yeah.
they go, where is it?
Yeah.
They weren't ready.
Yeah, they were just not ready. I kinda like going the backwards and, what I call the better way into it. Figure out if there's something you wanna do. If there is something you wanna do, then you go to vote on that. And say, here's what we'd like to do. if that's something we ultimately get there.
Due to the election that just happened in the state, is there, you think the possibility of 152 getting repealed though with did the state house
I
or
don't know.
state
Parts
senate
makeup's
change?
the same, state senate is still Republican, Democrats still hold the House. I don't think the makeup changed.
I have no political assessment, but that sounds pretty.
Another question,
It's what I do for a living, so.
do we have any, is there any data or evidence from like Longmont that it enhanced their economic development? That's different than people saying, I want faster.
Yeah,
My business,
anecdotally, when we went to
But did
this,
they
yeah.
actually gain business development because of it?
So we heard a lot from Arvada, who was saying that their mayor spoke and a couple other of their electeds saying that businesses have told them that it's a driver for economic development, knowing that they're gonna have high-speed internet, that they would have lost out on business deals, transactions, whatnot, if they weren't willing to put up and get
So is
going.
Arvada doing something?
Yep. Mhm.
They are.
Mhm. So they spoke a lot about economic
So
development,
they feel
and
that
that's a driver.
businesses chose Arvada
Yeah,
over some other community.
overwhelmingly, that's what they were saying.
Longmont said that same thing up at
Mhm.
CML.
I thought
That
so.
they, yeah, and if you're interested in seeing what NextLight is really about, I'm sure if you Google it, they had a great, like a commercial or a little mini video, and it's done really well. That kind of gives you a little bit of like what it's what they use to kind of relay to folks and help promote their service, and program.
Well, I will do my due diligence in studying this further. I'm generally skeptical of government getting involved in running any kind of business enterprise for the inherent risks. But
I think 17 is gonna be a watershed year, whether Comcast, I think we're gonna learn a lot more. We're gonna find out if competition can do what they're doing.
well, it's
Yeah.
interesting that, I mean, even in this short amount of time, competition is growing.
Yeah.
I joked about CenturyLink. I mean, 2 years ago at my house over on Rochester, I was only getting 5, and now it's up to 12. I mean, so there are improvements being made. So the question is, will us doing it be a reaction and then be behind the 8 ball? Anyway.
I think it's always, in this type of issue, good for Longmont, and we'll see at the end of the day. But I think this is one of those I think we're in a pretty good spot, because we've been able to kind of monitor, see.
Yeah.
But we don't wanna lose where the trend's going. And I think that's where we are today, is watch where that trend's going and make sure you're in the wave. Don't step away from the wave, if we can figure out where the wave is going. And I think that's what 17 is gonna be about, where's the wave going?
Well, because I haven't been through this before, what kind of leverage is there in the franchise agreement?
That's what I'm saying, there isn't.
None.
That's awesome.
Because it's telecommunications cable.
But I do know, there was some fallout from when Longmont did this.
Mhm.
Well, the residents got a great, that 49, there were some businesses who for a while were very unhappy because they had some huge increases to their monthly bill.
This is their commercial rates.
So.
But they don't have to choose it.
They don't have to choose it, exactly.
Yeah, how does that compare though to other?
Well, Paul's paying how much now?
I
For 50?
am right there, that's not a savings to me,
For
right?
for 50, you're at symmetrical, is that what that is?
Grass is not necessarily greener on the other side?
I'm basically in that 50 down, 10 up, and I pay 110, and they wanted a 3-year contract.
A 3-year contract, wow.
So the only thing, then at the end of the day, if you're in Longmont and it's Comcast versus that, then the question is, from your perspective, you're Longmont City Council, is it better for you to control your destiny or not?
Mm-hmm.
That's where it is at the end of the day, so.
I mean, it's just a matter of time with any technology before the price comes down, the more people can.
And it all probably equates.
Yeah. but
So
yeah,
let me do a little bit more work with Greeley,
Well, the reason for that
and I'll get back to you very
is it's gonna
shortly
get cheaper
where
once
they're
one
going
gig
in
becomes like
2017, that's all
the
right.
high,
Good.
Do you have anything about future meetings?
We went through right before you left,
Okay.
so we're gonna meet over the police department next week at 6.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
There's the
she
2 to
applied
3
to me,
o'clock
so
on
yeah,
Friday.
my neighbor is applying or been nominated to be a judge in
Is,
Nevada or Aurora.
District judge?
Yeah, or
future gets here.
municipal,
This is
some
really
of
municipal,
something like assistant. She asked if I would write a letter, so like,
Captain?
there's no conflict with
Exactly,
me.
that was my.
No,
I
I
will
think
do it under-
it's probably a district judge,
Okay.
when we were
because that's what they